What I'm trying to do today is try to turn my microwave into a replicator. And really, I don't think it'll be that hard, because I know they work on entirely different principles, but basically they both give you food, so all I need to figure out how to make it give me food without putting food in first, which, I mean, it shouldn't be that bad. Because if you look on the front here, it actually has, like, food buttons. So I'm kind of in the mood for popcorn, so I'm going to try that one. Popcorn. Start. No popcorn. Alright, popcorn's kind of complicated. Maybe it can do bread. Okay, so bread, 1 loaf, start. I'm gonna try to give it a second this time, see if that helps. Maybe it takes a while to like get like the energy pattern right or something. Alright. Still no bread. Alright. I wasn't really sure if it would work, so plan B, it's just to take it apart and see how it works. So I actually have my screwdriver set here. So I'm going to do that. And there really aren't very many screws on that thing, so I'll start out with this one here. Okay, bad idea. Bad idea. Alright, we're giving up on the screwdriver set. Need screwdrivers. I'm going about this all wrong. I just need to talk to it. That's what they do in the show. Alright, dinner plate. Potatoes. Potatoes? Okay. It's ridiculous. Hey guys, before I get started on this episode, there's one point I wanted to touch on. Whenever I started numbering my episodes, I counted Encounter at Farpoint as both parts was episode 1, and then I did The Naked Now as episode 2, and so on from there. But I realized that most places where it has the episode list, it counts Encounter at Farpoint as 2 separate episodes, which has kind of put me behind an episode. Like, I did, the last episode as episode 5, it should have been episode 6. So I've gone back and renumbered those just to make it easier to keep track of in the future, and so that I won't end up with actually 1 episode less in season 1 than there should be. So that makes today episode 7 instead of episode 6. So I just wanted to clear that up. But onto the episode. It's called Lonely Among Us, and it's a pretty, well, the basic plot, there's only one pretty much plot line, but it's more of a mystery, so it's kind of complicated. It starts out with the Enterprise. They're going to these 2 planets, well, they just went to these 2 planets in the solar system to pick up delegates from these 2 different species that want to be considered for entry into the Federation. And the Enterprise has taken them to this peace parliament so that they can, like, discuss their differences because these 2 species are at war. And so they take those on board, and they're on the way there, and they encounter this energy cloud that's going at warp speed. And they go around it, and as soon as they go around it, they start experiencing all these difficulties. Like, they get random malfunctions with the transporter, helm control, the warp systems, well, the warp engines. And there's no way at all that these systems could have just malfunctioned at the same time. So they decided that they realized it was like this random energy surge. And so, like, right whenever they passed through the cloud, Worf got zapped by this energy. He goes to sickbay, Beverly touches him, and then she gets zapped. And then this energy kind of goes around the ship, and it gets into the ship system, and it messes with them, and then it ends up coming back out, and it infects, well, it hits Picard. And so Picard, like, I'm doing a really bad job explaining this, sorry. They get their systems back online, they're going back to the Parliament, they're getting random malfunctions along the way, but they're making it there. Once Picard gets zapped, he tells them to turn the ship around, go back to the energy cloud that they encountered. And the crew thinks this is kind of weird, but they decide they're following his orders, obviously, because he's the captain. So he goes back there, and then along the way, they've realized that he has this energy inside of him, and they find out that it is a separate entity. Because he kind of explains it to them once they get back to the cloud that they picked up this bit of energy, and it's actually a living, sentient creature. It doesn't have, like, it's not made out of matter, it's made entirely out of energy. So Picard and this creature, they decide that they're going to beam both of them back out inside the cloud and like be explorer buddies for all eternity. So they beam off the ship, and the crew is freaking out because Picard is just out there floating in space as this energy. And they're trying to figure out how to get him back, and they can't. So Riker gives the order for them to leave, and right at that moment, Troi says that she senses the captain. So they fly into the cloud, like, Picard gets his consciousness into the ship's systems. Like, they see a little P on Geordi's helm, like, dash control thing. Like, oh, Picard's in the system. So they run to the engineering room. They still have this pattern in the transporter buffer, because he was the last person who beamed out, so they can like recreate his body pretty much from that pattern, and his consciousness goes back inside and everything works out fine. But it is a really weird episode. Like, most of the other episodes have been kind of straightforward. This one was the first real mystery of Star Trek. But like the last one where no one has gone before, it was kind of like a mystery. But this one, like, everyone on the ship is just freaking out because they don't know what's going on, because whenever Worf got zapped, he didn't remember what happened while he had that consciousness inside of him. The same thing with Beverly. And it's kind of cool because they approach it in the show as a mystery, and I love this episode because of that. Because Picard kind of introduces Data to this concept, he introduces him to Sherlock Holmes and kind of tells him about it. And the next scene, Data, like, has a pipe, and he's pretending to be Sherlock Holmes because he read or uploaded or something all of the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle about Sherlock Holmes, and he's just infatuated with this character, and he loves the idea of Sherlock Holmes, and he's like getting really into it and saying how it's a mystery on board the ship because they don't know why all the systems are malfunctioning. And like that comes back a lot later in the series, because throughout the show, like, I think it's mostly through the first few seasons. I don't know how long it actually lasts, but Data does continue this love of the Sherlock Holmes character, and they actually have a few episodes based around that with Moriarty and stuff. And it also shows Picard's love of a good detective novel, because Picard loves, like, the idea of, like, a private eye, and in a few episodes on, he also gets, like, his little holodeck fantasy about that, because he loves the character Dixon Hill, which isn't a real character like Sherlock Holmes is. I read it was based on Sam Spade, who, I don't know if any of you have seen Humphrey Bogart movies, but like in the 40s, he played a detective named Sam Spade. I forget who actually like wrote that character, but he played that detective. And so Picard really loves this idea of like the private eye, kind of tough guy, and he, later on the first episode they introduced the holodeck in, he plays that character. And I think it's cool because this is the first episode that we really see them start to introduce these recurring themes that we see later on. Because we've had to this point, we've had like a lot of character development, but we haven't had a lot of like ongoing themes that we start to see pop up later on. And I just think that's really cool because I really like Data's infatuation with Sherlock Holmes and Picard's love of Dixon Hill. I think it actually shows a lot about their characters and their personalities. One of the mysteries that Data is talking about is one of their lieutenants, their assistant chief engineer, is actually killed by this random energy surge. He didn't get the energy thing didn't actually go inside of him and take over his mind, but he's working at this workstation. Sorry, I have this itch, sorry. But he's working at this workstation engineering, and he gets zapped and he just dies immediately. He gets electrocuted. I'm pretty sure his name was Lieutenant Singh, but the weird thing is we have never seen this guy before. And apparently he's one of the assistant chief engineers, and he's actually in the the conference room with like Picard and Riker and the senior officers, and he's actually in this episode a lot. And then he just dies. So like they're going through engineers like nobody's business, because we don't even see these engineers, and they pop up and then one of them dies, or like the Naked Now, like they pop up and then they're just gone for the rest of the time. And it really makes me wonder how they started this series without having any engineering personnel. Like, I mean, I know that in the show they have engineering personnel, but whenever they're doing casting and like character sketches, didn't they realize that they should have someone in engineering? Because I know that they were trying, like in the beginning, they weren't going to place as much emphasis on engineering as they ended up doing. But you'd think that they would have one, like, main reoccurring character down there. Because Jordy eventually gets down there, and my camera has been bouncing back and forth, I just realized. Have no idea why that is. I thought I fixed that earlier. Sorry about that. I hope that's not too distracting, because I don't know why it's doing that. It looks like it's kind of twitching. I don't know. But I'm going to try to ignore that, because that's really distracting for me, as I'm sure it's distracting for you. But, like I was saying, Jordy does kind of do some tech stuff in this episode, not a lot, but you can kind of see he's beginning his migration to engineering, but I'm just wondering how they started it out without a chief engineer. Because, like, you have everything else. You have, like, Tasha, the chief of security, you have Beverly in medical, but you don't really have anyone in engineering, which ends up becoming one of the main areas that they, like, film in. And I just find it odd that they would have started this without, like, they probably didn't even realize, I guess, that they didn't have anyone down there. Which I find kind of odd. It's not a big deal because they put Jordy in there the second season, but I feel like that was a really big oversight on their part. Because they have this entire branch of, like, the Starfleet, or the Enterprise personnel, and no one in it. Not a big deal, again, it just kind of bugs me. But the main point, or main plot, I guess, or theme of this episode, is the fact that after Picard gets infiltrated by this consciousness, the crew still has to follow his orders, because they know that something is kind of wrong with him, because as soon as he tells them to turn around and go back to the energy cloud, they realize that something's wrong. Because he's kind of rude. He asks Troy if he thinks that he should always have to explain his orders. She's like, no, of course you don't. But in the past, Picard has always been very open about why he's giving certain orders. Because I think he had a very good relationship with his senior staff, and he places a lot of trust in them. So he normally doesn't keep secrets. In this episode, he's being all secretive, and then, like, Riker, Troy, Data, and Crusher, I think, all get together, and they're trying to figure out what's wrong with him, and trying to figure out if he's going to do anything more erratic. And Beverly says there's two ways that they could legitimately commit mutiny. One is if she says that he is medically unfit for duty, which would take a lot. Because right now they have absolutely no proof that he's been compromised. And another would be for Riker to take over, but he'd have to have all the senior staff say that there's absolutely no other course of action. And again, they're not at that point yet. So Beverly tries to get Picard to go under, like, a psychiatric and medical evaluation. He refuses, tells her to give herself, Riker, and Troy one instead, which she does. And then whenever she goes to see him, she kind of looks at him and she asks if he is Picard, and he's like, yes, but I've also been joined with this being. And it's the next scene after that Picard decides to beam down, and he actually ends up incapacitating the crew. I don't think I mentioned that. But the way he manages to beam out is that he actually, like, knocks everyone out. But I'm wondering, in between the time when Beverly established that he was not in his right mind, that he was, like, under the control of this other entity, and the time that they actually got to the cloud and beamed out, why no one did anything? Because right there, they have the proof that, one, he's not fit for command, and two, like, that there's no other choice. So either Riker or Beverly could have taken, or, like, gotten him out of command at that point. And I find it kind of weird that they didn't do that. Like, I'm not sure how much time they had, but I feel like they did have a legitimate reason. But I think it kind of shows, like, how well they knew Picard, that they immediately realized that something was wrong. Because they do have such a good relationship with him that they could tell immediately that this wasn't right. I mean, he was kind of acting a little bit weird, but I feel like, especially on a crew that new, with, like, none of them even knew each other that well, that I think it's kind of cool that they had that bond, like, all of them could tell that Picard was weird and they had to do something about it. And that all the senior staff could actually talk to each other about it without someone go ratting and being like, hey, they're trying to, like, dethrone you, Picard, you should do something about that. And I might be overreacting to this a little bit, because they could tell that something was weird with Picard, but I think it kind of shows their dynamics off pretty well. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie The Kane Mutiny. I think it's Captain McQuigg or something. I'm pretty sure it's played by Humphrey Bogart. But it's kind of like their captain, it's on a naval vessel. It was made a while ago, so it's not like set in the future or anything. But it's on this ship in the Pacific, and their captain slowly starts to go insane. And they're realizing this, but they're trying to figure out what they can do about it, what they could like do to like commit mutiny in a way that they wouldn't get in trouble for, basically, because they don't have any real proof. But in that movie, they end up committing mutiny, and then they're put on trial for it. And that's kind of like this show. It's like, what can you possibly do when your captain is incapacitated but you don't have proof? And it's kind of neat because in the past episodes we've all had it. Picard had kept his wits about him when a lot of the crew hasn't, and he's been in charge. And this kind of goes to show, what does the Enterprise do when they don't have Picard to lead them, or when Picard is making the bad decisions? Like, how does the crew react when they don't have their captain? I just think that's a really neat concept. But I'm going to wrap this up now, so thanks for watching. I was going about it all wrong. Need a phase transition chamber. Tea, Lady Grey, hot. Well, that worked out well.